Hello, everyone, and welcome to another wonderful game from the FIDE Grand Swiss that finished yesterday. We know who qualified for the FIDE Candidates Tournament, joining Fabiano Caruana in 2026. Anish Giri and Matthias Blubaum are also in the Candidates Tournament. We are waiting for 5 more. Chances are it will be Hikaru and Pragnananda, but we're not going to announce it until it's 100%. The only way for Hikaru not to qualify via rating is that if Magnus said that he wants to play, and then he went and won 3 tournaments in a row, or just played enough games to have enough games to be considered for the highest rating spot. But unless that happens, it is going to Hikaru. And a lot of you said that you wanted to see a game from Andy Woodward. Now, he's only 15 years old, rated 2557, and he finished in the top 10 here in the Grand Swiss, which is absolutely incredible. There are at least 100 people here, or even more, higher rated than him. So that is, that is pretty amazing. And not only that, he played incredible chess against elite level opposition. We're going to discuss all of his opponents and standings after we check out the game. And this is only the second game ever I'm showing by Andy on this channel. First one was 2 years ago. He defeated Hans Niemann in the World Junior Championship in round 3. He was only 13 then. I don't know if he was even a Grandmaster. He got his Grandmaster title at 13. I just don't know if he was a Grandmaster at the time he beat Hans. But yeah, this is a game between Andy and Parham Maghsoodloo. This is the penultimate round, and Andy is coming off of a victory against Levon Aronyan. Now facing Parham. Pawn to d4. We have pawn to d5, we have pawn to c4, and pawn to e6. Knight to f3, we have knight f6, and pawn to g3. Going for the Catalan, we have d captures on c4, bishop to g2, and now pawn to a6. The usual stuff. Now waiting for either knight e5 or castles or queen to c2. All are viable moves for white. We have castles kingside, knight to c6, and queen to c2. This is all the main stuff. And knight captures on d4 by Parham, going for a trade of knights. Interestingly, there are some games where b5 has been played, just preventing queen captures on c4, but it's not something you would play with white. Maybe if you were facing a stronger opponent and you didn't mind the draw, then you could play it, because it's a very forced line. Knight e5, knight to b4 attacks the queen, queen d2, and now you remaneuver the knight, knight d5, and now, white can continue with something like b3 or rook to d1 or something, but the point is that you cannot strike with pawn to e4. If you do this, then the knight just moves, and you don't really have anything after knight to c6. We're just going to have a repetition here. You have to go to d7. If you go to d6, then e5 attacks the queen and opens up the bishop, so we would probably have a repetition here. So, like I said, it can be played, but if you consider yourselves to be a stronger player, you're not going to play something like this. So, knight captures on d4. This has been tested. This is the main stuff. Knight captures. We have queen captures on d4. Knight to d2, putting more pressure on c4, and pawn to c3. Again, all been played before. B captures queen to c5, and now rook to b1, hindering the development of the light square bishop. We have bishop to d6, and now there is a game where knight to e4 was played. Interestingly, also in the FIDE Grand Swiss of 2019, Ioannis Papaioannou played against Hikaru Nakamura, and the game ended quickly in a draw after this knight to e4 move. But here we have pawn to c4 by Andy, and it is now, as of move 12, that we have a completely new game. Queen to h5, putting pressure on that e2 pawn. We have knight to e4, defending and offering a trade of knights, and knight captures on e4. And here we have a very nice move by Andy. He doesn't just recapture with bishop captures or queen captures. He wants to get rid of the black queen from the queen side. So first the bishop to f3. Saying that, now the queen has to move to a less favorable square, and Parham goes all the way to a5. Now putting a little bit of pressure on that a2 pawn, so forcing a bishop capture. Bishop captures on e4, and now comes pawn to c6. And here we have rook to d1. Now, the big difference here in this line, and with the queen being on h5, is that now black can't just castle. And you don't really have an option for going for something like bishop to c5, which also looks very nice, because after bishop to b2, there's no castles and your position just looks bad. On the other hand, if the queen was on h5, you could put a bishop on c5, f7 would be defended, h7 would be defended. So it is the inclusion of Andy's bishop to f3 is very relevant. We have bishop back to e7 now, bishop to b2, and now queen g5, getting the queen to the king side to defend the g7 pawn. Pawn to h4, we have queen h6 now guarding both of the pawns, and bishop to e5. And here Parham should definitely just castle, but you know, if you castle, then pawn to c5, bishop to d6, and this is a game that only white can win. Or maybe it's a position where, you know, white isn't winning, but it looks like you're supposed to be winning, and then you overpush, and then maybe black gets some sort of a counter. But okay, bishop e5, Parham decides to go for pawn to f6, we have bishop to c7, and pawn to f5. We have bishop back to g2, Parham castles, and now you could go for c5 definitely right away. But we have queen to c3, trying to bait out bishop to f6 to probably go queen a5 and then completely lock down the queen side. You will not have you will not be able to push the a pawn to b pawn. You're not going to be able to develop the bishop. So that is the idea, and that is why Parham does not go for bishop to f6. Instead, he goes for pawn to a5. So he prevents the idea. Pawn to c5, claiming that the d6 square, and bishop to f6. We have queen to c4, nicely aligning the queen with the black king, and g8. Queen to g6, and now pawn to e4. Also, bishop to d6 is always an idea, and he goes for pawn to e4. First, we have queen to f7, and bishop to d6. We have pawn to e5, offering a trade of queens, or even just attacking the white queen. But if you capture, then the rook can capture on f7, and thus avoiding the loss of the exchange. But we have queen to c2 by Andy, and now comes bishop to e7. And the reason for this move that gives up the e5 pawn is that if you play something like, let's say, rook d8, then he captures on f5, and you again lost a pawn, and your position is just bad. There's no way to develop the bishop. The rooks aren't doing anything. The queen really not that useful. You cannot develop, so this is as good as lost. So after bishop to c2, we have bishop to e7. Parham offers the e5 pawn. Bishop captures on e5, and now pawn to a4, grabbing more space on the queen side, preparing pawn to a3. We have bishop back to d6, and the bishop captures. We have pawn captures and bishop to e6, but now pawn to e5. And you have two connected pass pawns in the center of the board. And black has some sort of a potential for a king side attack with pawn to f4 captures and maybe opening up the f file. And that's exactly what Parham goes for. He plays pawn to f4, and now we have pawn to d7. A move that the engine really doesn't like, but what the engine likes is just not something that humans would do. For example, the engine likes rook b4. Okay, you put the pressure on f4, and now after captures and captures, let's say pawn to a3, now just rook to d2. And you improve your position as much as possible. You put the other rook on the d file, queen on c5, control the queen side, control everything, and then slowly but surely prepare the advance of the pawn. Okay, now that I think about it, it does actually sound like a good idea. But okay, Andy went for pawn to d7 right away. F captures, we have F captures, and now there's only one move that saves Parham here. Everything else is either lost or close to lost. What would you play here? How would you defend this position? That is also very relevant. So the only way to defend this is to play bishop to f5. And that is a must. If you're thinking about bishop captures on d7 right away, then rook captures actually works for white. But if you throw in a bishop to f5, seemingly attacking the queen and the rook, then after the queen moves, and doesn't really matter where, then you not capture the rook, then you play bishop captures on d7. And now it is much different, because now after rook captures on b7, the queen is on a pretty bad square, and you can attack it again. Bishop g4, and now you're really attacking the rook on b7, and white has nothing better than to trade here. Captures, rook captures on f8 with check, king captures, you move the rook, something like this. Let's say rook a5, you go after the pawn, and after bishop captures, you put a pawn on a dark square. White is up a pawn for the moment, but with the weak pawn on a2 and the weak pawn on e5, it should fizzle out in a draw. So it's not an easy spot, but bishop to f5 was definitely the move here. Parham, on the other hand, went for bishop captures on a2, and this, unlike bishop to f5, loses the game on the spot. Now, I don't have to ask you why, because I've already explained it. Of course, it's the only move you're looking at, and that is a rook captures on b7. And now you just don't have a move. Parham does go for bishop to b3, but Andy just eliminates it. The rook captures on b3, a captures, and queen captures on c6. Now with the terrible threat of bishop d5, just picking up the queen, or the other big threat, queen captures on a8. So Parham tries queen to f2 check. King h2, we have pawn to b2, getting the pawn one square away from the queening square, and now queen to d5 with check. We have queen to f7 blocking, and now you could just play pawn to e6, which looks like an automatic, but Andy wanted to finish in style. He played queen captures on a8, and he was in this position on move 39 that Parham Maghsoodloo resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Even if you continue with best engine play, let's say b1 queen, and then queen captures on f8, queen captures on f8, and rook captures on b1, you don't even need a queen. You can just checkmate the black king. So let's say queen e7 is played, you go after the pawn, bishop d5 check, and now it doesn't matter. If the king goes to h8, then you just go rook b8. If the king goes to f8, then rook to f1 with check, and once the queen blocks, you can choose how you want to finish this game. You can even bring a rook and deliver a nice checkmate this way. Not a rook because it's not checkmate, but yeah, you have to bring a queen and then it's checkmate. So, of course, he didn't want to see this on the board. After queen to a8, Parham resigned, and a wonderful victory for 15-year-old American Grandmaster Andy Woodward. Like I said, rated 25-57 in the previous round, defeated Levon, now defeated Parham. He's been crushing it, and he was on a path to qualifying for the candidates tournament. He still had a chance in the final round. He faced Yuan Yi. The game ended in a draw, although I'm not sure if he would qualify if he won. Also, other things had to go his way. Yeah, these are the standings, the final standings now of the FIDE Grand Swiss 2025. So Anish won the tournament, and Matthias Blumbaum is second. So Anish and Matthias qualify for the FIDE Candidates Tournament 2026. Then we have the almost qualified Alireza, Vincent, Abhimanyu Mishra, Arjun Ergaisi, and then in number 7, Andy Woodward. Absolutely incredible result for such a young age, and for rating of 25-57, I think he won over 30 rating points, something like 34 rating points this tournament. So he will very soon become a 2600, and then 2650, and no doubt a 2700 player. But yeah, we'll see what happens, and follow along the way. And interestingly, he finishes ahead of Hans Niemann, who he defeated 2 years ago in the World Junior Championship. Nihal Sari, Nodirbek Abdusatrova, Wonder Lee, Richard Rapor, Shahir Mamedjarov, Nodirbek Yakuboev, Vidit Gujarati, MVL, Yuangi, and so on and so on. So I mean, just ahead of all of these incredible names. That is a spectacular result, and especially since he almost qualified for the candidates tournament. These were his opponents for the tournament. So not an easy pairing since round one. Dmitry Kolars, Niels Grandelius, Ranak Sadvani, then a draw versus Maxim Rothstein, the only loss of the tournament versus MVL, and then he goes on a very nice unbeaten streak. Danil Yufa, victory, a draw versus Danil Dubov, draw versus Yakubov, then a victory versus Aronyan and Maghsoodloo, finishing it off with a draw against Yu Yangyi. So yeah, he didn't qualify for the candidates, but nonetheless a spectacular performance by the 15-year-old American Grandmaster. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want to also become, incredibly strong. Download Lotus Chess. First link in the description below, and try to use it as much as possible. You will see results very quickly. I see it. I'm now on a 48-day streak, and you really pick up on it. Like I still have holes, of course, as I didn't learn all of the openings, but the ones that I do play, the ones that I do use in everyday play, definitely you can see a difference. Now I'm hovering mostly around 2400 in bullet. Usually I was hovering between 21 and 2200, and the bullet is really where you can see if you've mastered the openings, as there you just play quickly and you get the results. For longer formats, of course, more than openings is needed, but you have to study everything. The middle game, you have to solve puzzles, you have to study the end game, so you cannot drop out anything, and then you will achieve great results. But yeah, spectacular stuff by young Andy. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Like I said, first link in the description below. Download Lotus and start your journey. I would like to thank Ali Yurukoglu, Joseph McCardle, John Verriet, Duncan Weinkel, and Ramesh Sadi for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.